The war had raged for years. It was a war unlike any other, where humanity faced a force from beyond the stars. Alien invaders, fierce and powerful, had descended upon Earth with one goal: to conquer. But humanity fought back with everything they had, from the oceans to the skies, and from the deserts to the cities. Captain Cole, a leader in the fight against the invaders, had seen it all. The battles, the losses, the victories, everything. Now, the war was finally over. The alien ships had been driven back, and the remnants of their once great empire lay in ruins. The human forces had succeeded, and Earth was safe. But the victory had come at a cost. The planet was scared, cities were destroyed, and millions of lives had been lost. Still, humanity had persevered. Now, as the dust settled, the time for dividing the spoils had come. Earth's leaders gathered in a grand council room to decide what to do with the remnants of the alien race. The war was won, but there were still questions. What would they do with the prisoners? What was the fate of those who had once been their enemies? Captain Cole stood at the front of the room, his uniform showing signs of wear from the long battle. He had seen enough war to last a lifetime. But today was different. Today, he wasn't a soldier fighting for survival. He was a part of a council that would shape Earth's future. His mind was sharp, but his heart was heavy. There was a sense of unease in the air, as though something wasn't right. The council room was filled with representatives from all over the world, each one having played a role in the victory. There was a hum of activity as discussion swirled around the room. Some spoke of rebuilding Earth's cities, while others debated how to handle the remaining alien prisoners. The air was thick with tension. Then the announcement came. The council leader, a stern woman with silver hair, stood up and addressed the room. "Let it be known that, as part of our victory," she said, her voice echoing through the room, "each of you will receive a gift from the defeated invaders. It is a symbol of our triumph, but also a reminder that we are not the same as those who would conquer us." Cole stood still, his eyes narrowing. What did she mean by gift? He had heard rumors. Some of the soldiers had spoken about receiving wealth or alien technology, perhaps even lands. But a gift from the invaders. The idea felt strange. Then, the council leader spoke his name. Captain Cole. Cole's heart skipped a beat. This was it. He stepped forward, his boots clicking on the floor. He stood tall, a leader in a time of peace, though the weight of the past hung heavily on his shoulders. The council leader smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Captain Cole, you have fought valiantly for Earth. As part of your reward, we present you with a special gift. The alien prisoner known as Mira." Mira. The name echoed in Cole's mind, and he felt a sudden, sharp sense of confusion. What was this? Why had they chosen him to receive one of the alien prisoners? Before he could respond, the doors to the council room opened. 2 guards stepped in, leading a young woman between them. She was an alien, but unlike the monstrous warriors who had invaded Earth, this woman seemed different. She was small, almost fragile-looking, with delicate features and bright, wide eyes that shimmered with something Cole couldn't quite place. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, and her hair, long and silver, cascaded around her shoulders. She was beautiful, but there was an air of sadness about her. Her gaze shifted around the room, clearly unsure of what was happening. It was clear that she had no idea what she had been chosen for. She looked more like a prisoner than a prize. Cole's mind raced. This was the gift. An alien woman who looked like she had been taken captive, just like so many others. He had expected to receive something of value, something that would symbolize their victory. But this was something entirely different. His eyes flickered to the council leader, whose face remained unreadable. "She's yours, Captain," the council leader said, almost casually. "Treat her well. She represents the peace we've won." Cole didn't know what to say. His hand instinctively reached for his sidearm, though it remained in its holster. He had been given many tasks during this war, but none quite like this. How was he supposed to take responsibility for this alien woman, a prisoner from a race that had invaded Earth? Mira was led to him, and for a moment there was silence. Her eyes met his, and there was something in them that made Cole pause. She wasn't just a prisoner. There was something more, something he couldn't quite understand. But for now, it didn't matter. She was his charge, and that was what mattered. The guards left the room, leaving Cole and Mira standing together. The room felt suddenly quiet, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could hear his heart beat in his chest as he tried to make sense of the situation. Mira stood there, unsure of what was expected of her. Her eyes shifted nervously, glancing at the walls of the room, the soldiers, and then back at Cole. She seemed small and fragile in this new world, like a child lost in a place she didn't understand. Cole swallowed hard, still unsure of what to say. "You're with me now. You'll stay in my quarters until we figure out what to do with you." Mira nodded, her expression still uncertain. She didn't speak, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a quiet understanding, perhaps, or a plea for mercy. Cole didn't know, but one thing was certain. His life had just changed in a way he couldn't possibly predict. As he led her out of the council room, he felt the eyes of his fellow soldiers on him. They didn't understand what was happening either, but Cole couldn't shake the feeling that Mira's presence here was more significant than it seemed. She wasn't just an alien woman. She was something more, and whether he liked it or not, Cole was about to find out just what that was. Captain Cole hadn't expected this. Leading a war to victory, only to be handed a mysterious alien gift, was far from what he had imagined. But now, as he walked through the dimly lit corridors of the human military base, Mira walked beside him. She was quiet, her eyes wide and uncertain. The blue-skinned alien woman seemed completely out of place in the sterile human environment. Cole wasn't sure what to think. He had been tasked with looking after Mira, but he didn't know what that meant. Was she a prisoner, a symbol of peace, or was there something more to her story? As they walked, the silence between them grew thick. Mira didn't speak, her gaze fixed ahead, as if trying to avoid drawing attention. Cole felt a strange tension in the air, something between them that he couldn't quite place. She was supposed to be a prisoner, a mere gift, but the more he looked at her, the less he understood what she was doing here. They reached Cole's quarters, and as he unlocked the door, he motioned for her to enter. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, glancing around at the simple furnishings. The room was nothing special, bare walls, a small bed, and a desk. It was the kind of room any soldier might have. But for Mira, it was likely a prison. Cole didn't know what to say. His mind raced with questions, but he didn't want to overwhelm her. Instead, he settled into a chair and gestured for her to sit on the bed. She did, still avoiding eye contact. "Mira," Cole said gently, his voice breaking the silence. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you." Her eyes flickered up to meet his, though she still looked uncertain. "You're not like the others," she said in a soft voice, her words heavily accented. There was a sadness in her eyes, a feeling of deep loss that Cole couldn't ignore. "I'm not like the others," Cole repeated, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean by that?" Mira hesitated, biting her lip as if trying to find the right words. "I don't belong with them," she whispered. "I never did." Cole's curiosity deepened. He sat up straighter, eager to hear more. "What do you mean? You were with the invaders. You fought against us. What are you trying to say?" Mira shook her head slowly, her long silver hair falling over her shoulder. "I was taken. I didn't choose to fight. They made me. My people. We are not all the same. We are divided. There are factions. Some of us don't want war." Cole's mind raced. He had been told that all the aliens were enemies, that they were part of a powerful empire intent on conquering Earth. But here was Mira, someone who claimed that not all of them had been willing to fight. "But you're a member of their race, aren't you?" Cole asked. You were part of the invasion. Mira's expression darkened, and she looked away. Yes, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, but I was never part of the leadership. I was a prisoner of my own people. They forced me to join them. Cole felt a wave of confusion. If Mira wasn't a willing fighter, then what did this all mean? Why had she been given to him as a gift? And why did she seem so different from the others? You're saying you were forced into this? Cole asked, his voice softer now. Yes, she replied, her eyes flickering with a mix of shame and sorrow. I have no choice in this. I was born into a family with no power, no choice. When the war began, I was taken. My people didn't care for the weak. They don't care about anything except conquering. I was a tool to them, nothing more. Cole's heart sank. He had never thought about the war from this perspective. For all the alien invaders had done, the destruction they had caused, he had never considered that some of them might have been forced into it. So, you're telling me that your people didn't all want this war? Cole asked slowly, trying to piece it all together. No, Mira whispered. The invasion was led by a faction of my people, the strongest, the most ruthless. But there were others, those who wanted peace, who didn't agree with this war. We were taken, used as pawns. I didn't want to fight. I was only trying to survive. Cole sat back in his chair, stunned by her words. For the first time, he started to see the invasion in a new light. He had always seen the aliens as one monolithic force, invaders with no mercy, enemies to be destroyed. But now, he was hearing about divisions, about factions, about those who had been unwilling participants in the war. Was Mira telling the truth? Was there more to this story than what they had been told? I didn't even know Earth existed, Mira continued, her voice filled with regret. I didn't know your people. I didn't know you. Cole stood up, pacing the room as he thought over everything she had said. Mira seemed genuine, her voice full of pain. But could he trust her? Could he risk believing an alien prisoner when so many of her kind had tried to destroy Earth? As if reading his thoughts, Mira spoke again, her words soft but full of conviction. I'm not your enemy, Captain. I swear it. I want to help you. Help your people. Cole paused, looking at her. She wasn't like the others. That much was clear. But there was something else, something deeper, pulling at him. She wasn't the enemy. But could he believe her? What do you want from me? Cole asked, his voice steady but uncertain. Mira met his gaze, her eyes filled with hope. I want to help you stop them. The ones who really started this war. There is a greater threat coming, and Earth won't survive it if you don't listen. Cole felt a chill run down his spine. What was she talking about? A greater threat? Who could be worse than the alien forces they had just defeated? Tell me everything, Cole said, his mind racing. Tell me what's really going on. And with that, Mira began to speak, telling Cole the secrets she had been holding back for so long, secrets that would change everything. As the days passed, Captain Cole found himself spending more time with Mira. At first, he had kept his distance, unsure of what to make of her. She was an alien, and everything about her was foreign. Her appearance, her culture, even her way of thinking. Yet the more he observed her, the more he began to see her not as a prisoner or enemy, but as a person who had been forced into a situation she never asked for. Mira, for her part, seemed just as uncertain as Cole. She was quiet and reserved, spending most of her time in the small quarters assigned to her. The once proud alien woman who had come from a world of power and strength now looked lost, as though she had no place in the world anymore. Her people had been defeated, and she had no idea what the future held for her. At first, their conversations were awkward. Mira didn't trust Cole, and he didn't trust her. She had told him that her people, the ones who had led the invasion, were ruthless. They didn't care about peace. But she had also revealed something else, that there were those among her people who had wanted peace, who had been forced into the war. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a victim, too. One afternoon, Cole found himself sitting across from Mira in the mess hall. He had invited her to join him, hoping to learn more about her, to understand her better. It was a simple gesture, but in a world so full of chaos and war, it felt strangely significant. Mira picked at her food, her blue fingers carefully moving the vegetables around her plate. She still didn't seem comfortable, and Cole noticed that she wasn't eating much. He knew she wasn't used to human food, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. "Are you okay?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "You're not eating much." Mira glanced up at him, her eyes meeting his with a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. She hesitated before answering. I don't know if I can trust it. I don't know if I can trust anything here." Cole understood. She had been a prisoner for so long, living under the control of her own people. Now she was surrounded by strangers, humans who had fought her people for years. How could she trust them? "I get it," Cole said softly. "You've been through a lot. I know you don't have a reason to trust me, but I'm not like the others. I'm just trying to figure this out." Mira didn't respond right away. She only stared at her plate, lost in thought. Finally, after a long silence, she looked up at him again. "I don't know how to live in this new world. I don't know how to be free." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Cole felt a pang of sympathy for her. He had always been taught that the aliens were invaders, that they were all enemies. But Mira was different. She wasn't like the others. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to help him see things differently. "You don't have to be alone," Cole said gently. "You're not a prisoner here. You're safe." Mira's eyes flickered, a mixture of relief and disbelief passing across her face. She wasn't used to hearing that. In her world, there was no safety, no peace. She had always been at war, always fighting, always running. But here, things were different. Here, she was just a person who had been given a second chance. "I'm not sure I can ever be truly safe," she said softly, looking down again. "But I'll try." Cole smiled, though it was a sad smile. He knew that what he had said wasn't enough to heal the wound she carried. She had been broken by her own people, and no amount of kind words could fix that. But he hoped that, somehow, he could help her find her way. The next few days were filled with more quiet conversations. Cole would ask her questions about her people, about her world, and she would share what she could. She spoke of her home planet, a place of beauty and advanced technology, but also of division and conflict. Her people were once great, but internal strife had torn them apart. The war had only made things worse. "I wasn't always like this," Mira told him one evening as they sat together in the quiet of the room. "I was a healer once. I helped people. I cared for them. But when the war started, everything changed. My world changed." Cole listened intently, trying to understand the pain in her voice. "It sounds like you didn't want any part of it. Why did they choose you?" Mira's expression darkened. "My family was weak. We had no power, no influence. The leaders of my people took the ones they could control. They chose me because I had no one to protect me." Cole's heart went out to her. She had been a healer, a person who dedicated her life to helping others. And now she was here, in a strange new world, trying to find her place in a broken system. "But you're not weak," Cole said quietly. "You're strong, Mira. You've survived this long. That means something." Mira looked up at him, her blue eyes meeting his. For a moment, there was a flicker of something in her gaze. Hope, perhaps, or the possibility of trust. It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. "I don't feel strong," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But maybe I can learn to be." Cole nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be here." And with that, something began to shift between them. There was still so much they didn't know about each other, but there was a quiet understanding growing between them. It wasn't trust yet, not fully. But it was a beginning. In the days that followed, Cole found himself thinking more and more about Mira. She wasn't the enemy he had been taught to hate. She was someone who had been caught in the middle of something far bigger than herself, a casualty of war and politics. And as the two of them grew closer, Cole couldn't shake the feeling that Mira's knowledge, her insight into her people, could be the key to something much larger, a way to finally end the cycle of war that had torn both their worlds apart. The bond between them was fragile, but it was growing. Slowly, piece by piece, they were learning to trust each other. And with that trust came the possibility of something even greater, an alliance between two peoples who had once been enemies. But that was still a long way off. For now, Cole could only hope that Mira would one day see Earth not as a prison, but as a place where she could finally find peace. Weeks passed, and Captain Cole's connection with Mira deepened. Despite the constant pressure of his military duties, he found himself spending more and more time with her, trying to learn more about the alien race she came from. The quiet, careful way she spoke about her people, the pain in her eyes when she mentioned her past, it all tugged at his heart. Mira had started to trust him, just a little. She had begun to speak more openly about her past, her childhood, the world she had once known. Her story wasn't one of war and violence, but of peace, beauty, and the hope that one day her people could live harmoniously. That all changed when the invasion began. "I was so young," Mira said one evening, her voice almost a whisper. "I didn't even understand the politics. My people, they were once peaceful. But then, a faction of extremists took control, and everything changed. They believed that conquest was the only way to unite us. I didn't agree, but I had no choice." Cole listened intently. He had spent so much of his life fighting against an alien threat, always seeing them as enemies, that hearing Mira's perspective was eye-opening. She was not the enemy. She was a casualty of a war she had no part in starting. One evening, after a long day of talks with the council and military leaders, Cole returned to his quarters, hoping to relax. But as he entered, he found Mira sitting at the small table, her hands clasped together, looking troubled. "What's wrong?" he asked, closing the door behind him. Mira looked up, her face tense. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, her voice uncertain, "about what I told you before, about the war." Cole raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" Mira stood up, pacing the small room. "I told you that my people were divided, but I didn't tell you everything. There's more to the story, much more. And I'm afraid if you knew, you might never trust me again." Cole frowned, sensing the seriousness of her words. "What are you talking about?" Mira stopped pacing and turned to face him. Her expression was somber, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "There's a reason why the war started. It wasn't just a matter of one faction trying to take control. There was something more, something much darker." Cole took a step forward, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What's the real reason?" Mira took a deep breath, as if bracing herself for what she was about to say. The invasion of Earth wasn't the first step in the conquest. It was a test to see if your people would fight back. My people, they didn't want Earth for its resources or for any strategic value. They wanted it for something much worse. Cole's heart raced. He could hear the urgency in her voice, the fear that had replaced her earlier calm. What could they want Earth for? Mira's eyes lowered, and she spoke in a whisper, as if the very thought of it frightened her. The energy that flows through your planet, through your atmosphere, your oceans. It's something my people have been searching for years. Earth has a resource that no other planet in the galaxy has, a resource that could give them ultimate power." Cole's mind struggled to keep up with what Mira was saying. "Are you saying that Earth's energy could be used to, what? Destroy other planets, conquer the galaxy?" Mira nodded slowly, her face grim. "Yes, the energy from your planet could be harnessed to fuel weapons, powerful weapons that could destroy entire star systems. My people, They didn't want Earth for any of the usual reasons. They wanted it because it could give them the ability to control the universe. Cole's stomach twisted with horror. He had never imagined that Earth's survival was tied to something so much larger than just their war with the invaders. So, the war. It was all for this. Mira looked away, her eyes filled with pain. Yes. And what's worse? The faction that took control of my people wasn't the only one after this power. There are others, rival factions, who would do anything to get their hands on this energy. And they're coming. They'll come to Earth soon. They'll come for the power that you have. Cole's mind was spinning. The enemy they had fought for so long, the ones they thought they had defeated, now they weren't the only threat. There were others, more dangerous enemies, waiting in the wings. The war was far from over. "Are you sure about this?" Cole asked, his voice steady but filled with disbelief. "How do you know this?" Mira's face hardened. "I wasn't just a healer. I had access to information. I knew things that most people didn't. Before the invasion, there were whispers, rumors, about this energy. I was told that if Earth wasn't conquered, the factions would come here anyway. They would come to take the power." Cole clenched his fists, his mind racing. He had been too focused on winning the war, on defeating the enemy in front of him. He hadn't considered the possibility that there was something even more dangerous lurking behind the scenes. And now, the clock was ticking. These factions, whoever they were, would come for Earth's energy. And when they did, Earth might not survive. He looked at Mira, his eyes narrowing with determination. "So, what do we do? How do we stop them?" Mira hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "I don't know yet, but I have an idea. I can help you prepare, Captain. I know the factions. I know how they think, how they move. If you trust me, I can help you build a defense. But time is running out." Cole nodded, his resolve hardening. He had been given a second chance, not just to protect Earth, but to stop a greater threat from destroying everything they had fought for. He couldn't waste any more time. "We'll work together," Cole said firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect this planet." Mira nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I'll help you. I promise." And with that, they both knew their work was just beginning. The real battle was ahead, and it would take everything they had to survive it. But Cole had made his decision. He would trust Mira, because the fate of Earth depended on it. Captain Cole sat in the war room, the heavy silence of the room pressing down on him. Around him, the brightest minds in the military gathered, their faces tense, their eyes focused on the large holographic display in front of them. A map of Earth was projected in the center of the room, but Cole's attention wasn't on the map. His mind was elsewhere, thinking of the conversation he had had with Mira just hours before. The threat Mira had spoken of, the one that loomed over Earth like a shadow, was becoming more real with every passing hour. He had spent the day meeting with military commanders, trying to prepare a defense against the alien factions she had warned about. But it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed information, and that was where Mira came in. She was the key to understanding the enemy. "Captain, we need a decision," one of the commanders, General Harris, said, his voice cutting through the silence. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a sharp face and a no-nonsense attitude. He had fought in every major battle during the war, and now he was looking to Cole for leadership. Cole nodded, his thoughts racing. "I know, General. We're doing everything we can to prepare, but there's a lot we don't know. These factions, Mira says they'll be coming for Earth's energy. If we don't act quickly, we'll be unprepared." General Harris didn't seem convinced. "We can't rely on one alien's word, Captain. You've seen what her people did to us. How do we know she's telling the truth?" Cole's eyes met the general's, his voice calm but firm. "I know what we've been told about the aliens, General. I've been fighting them just like you. But Mira isn't like the others. She's not here to destroy us. She's here to help. We've all been taught to fear them, But we need to stop seeing them as one uniform enemy. There are factions, yes, but not all of them are after Earth's destruction. Harris seemed to think for a moment, his expression hardening. And what if she's lying, Captain? What if this is all part of some trick to get us to lower our guard? I don't think that's the case, Cole replied, his voice steady. Mira has been open with us. She shared everything she knows, even the most dangerous secrets. She's risking everything by helping us. If she wanted to betray us, she would have done it already. The room fell into an uneasy silence as everyone mulled over Cole's words. Finally, General Harris spoke again, his tone more measured. So what's the plan, Captain? Cole exhaled, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. We need to strengthen our defenses, but we also need to learn more about the factions Mira spoke of. She says they want Earth's energy, and if they come, they'll be well organized. We need to know what we're up against before it's too late. A few of the other officers nodded in agreement. They all knew the stakes were higher than ever. Understood, General Harris said. I'll mobilize our forces to start reinforcing key locations, but you'll need to figure out how to get this information from Mira. We can't wait much longer. Cole turned and left the war room, his mind already focused on Mira. He needed her more than ever now. She was the only one who had the knowledge to help them prepare for what was coming. Hours later, Cole was sitting across from Mira in the quiet of his quarters. She looked different now, calmer, more at ease than when they had first met. It was as though the walls she had built around herself were slowly starting to come down. But Cole knew that her past still haunted her. The scars of war and betrayal weren't easily erased. Mira, Cole began, his voice low and serious. We need more information. We can't just wait for these factions to show up. We need to understand what we're dealing with. You said you knew how they think. Can you tell me more? Mira hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the window. The light from the setting sun bathed the room in a soft, golden glow. She seemed lost in thought for a moment before she spoke. I can tell you what I know, Captain, but you need to understand, it won't be easy. These factions, they're powerful. They don't think like us. They're willing to do anything to get what they want. Cole leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. What do they want? Mira. What drives them? Mira looked at him, her expression grave. Power. Control. They believe that only the strongest should rule. They don't care about life or peace. They believe in survival of the fittest. The faction that led the invasion, my people, they are the most dangerous. But there are others, more ruthless and more cunning. Cole frowned. How do we stop them? Mira shook her head slowly. You can't fight them head-on, not unless you're ready to lose everything. They won't be defeated with weapons alone. They use something far more powerful. Information. Secrets. They know how to manipulate and deceive. Cole's thoughts raced. So what you're saying is, we need to outsmart them. Mira nodded. Exactly. You need to gather intel, make alliances, find a way to turn their strength against them. But it won't be easy. These factions are always watching, always listening. They have spies, informants. You'll have to be careful. I understand, Cole said, his voice firm. But how do we even begin to fight something like that? How do we get close to them? Mira's eyes darkened. I've been inside their networks. I know how they operate. There's a place, a facility, where they keep their most valuable secrets. It's hidden, but I know where it is. If we can get there, we might be able to find a way to stop them. Cole's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, a way to strike at the heart of the enemy without firing a single shot. Where is it? Cole asked, his voice urgent. Mira hesitated, then gave him the coordinates. It was far away, on a distant, remote world, hidden from any human radar. But Cole knew they didn't have much time. If they didn't act soon, the factions would come for Earth, and they might not be ready. We leave tomorrow, Cole said, determination in his voice. "Prepare yourself. This is the beginning of the end." Mira met his gaze, her face serious. "I'll help you, Captain. But remember, this mission will test everything. We have to be ready for anything." And with that, Cole and Mira shared a look that said everything they needed to say. They were in this together, and no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. The mission was set. Captain Cole had gathered a small, elite team for the operation, each member handpicked for their skills. They were going into enemy territory, and they knew it would not be easy. The journey ahead would take them to a distant, uncharted world where danger awaited at every turn. But Cole had no choice. Mira had given him the coordinates to the facility where the enemy's secrets were kept, and he was determined to stop them before the factions could reach Earth. As the ship prepared for launch, Cole stood on the bridge, watching the crew hustle to finish the final checks. His thoughts kept drifting back to Mira. She had become more than just an ally. She had become a partner. He trusted her with his life, and he could see that she was just as determined as he was to protect Earth from the coming storm. Mira stood beside him, her face calm but her eyes reflecting the gravity of the mission. They had not spoken much in the past few hours, both lost in their thoughts. The weight of what they were about to do was heavy, but neither of them would back down. "You ready for this?" Cole asked, turning to Mira. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I've been ready for this for a long time, Captain," she said quietly. "I've spent my life under the rule of people who would destroy entire worlds without a second thought. But this time, it's different. This time, we have a chance to stop them." Cole nodded, his eyes hardening with resolve. "We will stop them." The countdown began. There was no turning back now. Hours later, the ship broke through the atmosphere of Earth and headed out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars were distant, cold, and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos that had been consuming their worlds. As the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, the crew remained focused, preparing for whatever lay ahead. Mira was quiet, sitting in a corner of the bridge, staring out into the darkness. Cole watched her for a moment before walking over. "Still thinking about what's waiting for us?" he asked softly. She nodded without looking at him. "I've seen what those factions are capable of. They have weapons, resources, and influence. But the one thing they don't have is unity. They may be strong, but they're fractured. That's their weakness. And that's what we'll exploit." Cole could see the determination in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for a future where her people could live in peace. He couldn't blame her for wanting that. It was something they all shared. "We're in this together," Cole said, his voice steady. Mira finally turned to look at him, her blue eyes searching his face. "I know, but this mission is more than just about stopping them. It's about saving everything we'd fought for. If we fail, it won't just be Earth at risk. It will be the entire galaxy." Cole didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. They both knew the stakes. The journey was long, and the crew spent their time preparing for the mission ahead. They had studied everything they could about the enemy factions, learning their strengths and weaknesses. The plan was simple: infiltrate the facility, retrieve the intel, and get out. But nothing ever went as planned, especially when dealing with enemies as dangerous as the ones they faced. As the ship neared the coordinates Mira had given them, a strange tension filled the air. The planet they were headed to was desolate, covered in barren deserts and jagged mountains. It was the perfect hiding place for something as important as the facility Mira had described. Cole stood in the observation room, watching as the planet grew larger in the viewport. The ship's engines hummed quietly beneath his feet, a constant reminder of the mission that lay ahead. He knew that once they touched down, there would be no room for mistakes. "We'll make it," Mira said, stepping beside him. "We just need to stay focused." Cole nodded, his jaw tightening. He wasn't sure if it was the uncertainty of the mission or the weight of everything that had happened so far, But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. They were walking into the unknown, and while Mira had promised that the facility was well guarded, he couldn't ignore the nagging sense that they were being watched. The ship descended through the atmosphere, the heat from the planet's surface causing the ship to shake slightly. The crew worked quickly, preparing for the landing. As the ship touched down with a soft thud, Cole's heart rate picked up. This was it. They had arrived. "Stay sharp," Cole ordered, his voice low. He looked over at Mira. "Lead the way." Mira nodded, a slight tremor in her movements, but her eyes remained calm. She had been in situations like this before, and though she had no love for the factions, she knew how to survive. That was what mattered now. The team disembarked, moving quickly into the shadow of the jagged rocks that surrounded the facility. The air was dry, thin, and suffocating, but they didn't have time to waste. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the facility, gather the intel, and leave. No distractions, no mistakes. The facility itself was hidden deep within the mountains, camouflaged to blend in with the natural surroundings. It was a fortress, one that had been built to withstand any attack. But Cole and his team had an advantage. They knew where it was, and they knew what to expect. Mira led them through a narrow pass, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement. They had to move quietly, stay out of sight. There were no guarantees. The factions were always watching, always listening. If they were spotted now, the mission would be over before it even began. Cole's team moved in formation, their footsteps barely making a sound on the rocky ground. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, felt like a potential threat. They were in enemy territory now, and anything could happen. Finally, they reached the entrance to the facility. A heavy steel door set into the side of the mountain. Mira stepped forward, her hands moving over a hidden panel. A soft beep echoed in the silence, and the door slowly creaked open, revealing the dark interior. "Let's go," Cole whispered. The team filed inside, weapons drawn, ready for whatever lay ahead. The air inside the facility was cold and sterile, the walls lined with advanced technology and equipment. Mira took the lead, her eyes focused as she navigated through the corridors, her knowledge of the facility guiding them. But as they moved deeper into the heart of the complex, Cole couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step felt like it was being calculated, every turn a trap waiting to spring. They had come this far. Now they had to finish what they started. The silence inside the facility was unnerving. Cole's boots echoed softly against the cold metal floors as he moved through the narrow hallways, his team following closely behind. The deeper they went, the more tense the air became. Every shadow seemed to hide something. Every flicker of light felt like a warning. They had come for answers, but now, Cole wasn't sure if they would get out alive. Mira led the way, her eyes scanning the darkened corridors with practiced precision. She knew this place better than anyone. She had spent years under the control of the very factions they were now up against. Her knowledge was invaluable, but even she was starting to feel the weight of their mission. Cole glanced back at his team. There were 5 of them, each one a specialist in their own right. Sergeant Lana, the sharpshooter, was always on edge, her hand never far from her weapon. Lieutenant Gregor, the tech expert, was scanning the facility's systems, hacking into anything he could to gather intelligence. Corporal Harris, a seasoned soldier, stood at the rear, keeping watch for any signs of pursuit. And Mira, of course, was their guide, the one who knew where the most dangerous areas of the facility were located. "We're getting close," Mira whispered, her voice low. "The central control room is just ahead. That's where they keep the most sensitive information." Cole nodded. "Let's keep it tight. We're not alone in here." They approached a set of heavy, reinforced doors. Mira stepped forward, pressing a small device against the control panel. The doors hissed open with a low, metallic groan. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but the walls were covered in holographic screens and data terminals, all showing streams of information in multiple alien languages. It was a nerve-wracking sight, an entire system designed to monitor, manipulate, and control everything. "We need to get to the main terminal," Mira said, moving quickly. "That's where all the data on Earth's energy is stored. It's the only way to stop them." Cole's heart raced as he surveyed the room. The terminal was at the far end, hidden behind layers of security. But they didn't have much time. If the factions were aware of their presence, reinforcements could be on their way. They needed to act fast. Gregor moved to the side, his fingers flying across the console in front of him. "Give me a minute. I can disable the security systems, but it's going to take time." Cole didn't wait for an answer. He gestured to the rest of the team. "Cover him. Mira, stay close to Gregor. We can't afford any surprises." Lana and Harris took positions near the door, their weapons raised. Cole and Mira moved toward Gregor, who was already deep into the system, bypassing security protocols with a few quick keystrokes. "Almost there," Gregor muttered, his eyes glued to the screen. Just a few more seconds. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. A low hum vibrated through the walls, and a chill ran down Cole's spine. He turned to Mira. "What's happening?" Mira's face was pale. "They've activated the facility's lockdown. It's a fail-safe. They know we're here." "Damn it," Cole cursed. "We don't have time." Gregor, finish the hack. "Everyone, stay sharp." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Cole's heart pounded in his chest. They were running out of time. Gregor's fingers flew across the terminal, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm almost in. Just a few more." Lana's voice cracked over the comms. "Captain, we've got company. They're coming." Cole turned to Mira, his voice low but urgent. "How much longer?" "Just a few more seconds." Mira said, "Once Gregor gets the data, we can leave. We'll be able to disrupt the faction's plans." The door slammed open, and 2 armed guards stormed into the room, their weapons raised. Lana reacted instantly, her rifle steady in her hands. She fired a precise shot that took down one of the guards before he could react. The other fired back, but Harris was already on him, taking the guard down in a heartbeat. The room fell into tense silence for a moment, but Cole's mind was still racing. The seconds felt like hours. Gregor was still working at the terminal, his eyes wide with concentration. "Come on, Gregor," Cole muttered, his eyes scanning the room for any other threats. Another pair of guards appeared at the door, this time armed with heavier weapons. It was clear that reinforcements had arrived. There was no way they would be able to hold off the entire facility for much longer. Gregor's voice broke through the tension. "Got it," he shouted. The screens in the room flickered, and then the data began to flow, streams of encrypted files that revealed the true scope of the faction's plan. Cole's eyes narrowed as he quickly scanned the information. It was worse than he had feared. The energy from Earth's core was already being harvested, and if they didn't stop it soon, the entire planet would be drained dry, leaving Earth a lifeless shell. "We have to destroy this facility," Cole said, his voice sharp. "Now, before they can send this data anywhere." "We can't just blow it up, Captain," Mira said, her voice urgent. "There's a backup system that will send the information to their main headquarters the moment this place is compromised." Cole clenched his jaw. "Then we need to stop that too." Gregor moved quickly, accessing another terminal. "I'm locking down the system. They won't be able to send the data, but we need to get out now." Cole didn't hesitate. "Move out. Now." With the data secured, they made their way toward the exit. The alarms blared louder now, and the entire facility seemed to shake with the urgency of their escape. The doors slammed shut behind them, and as they ran through the corridors, the walls seemed to close in. They were nearly at the exit when a loud explosion rocked the building. It was far from the first they'd heard, but this time it was closer. The facility was starting to collapse. "Keep moving," Cole shouted. They rushed through the final hallway, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The door to the ship was just ahead. As they made it outside, the ship's engines roared to life, and they climbed aboard. The door slammed shut behind them, and Cole looked out the viewport as the facility crumbled into the ground, consumed by flames. They had done it. They had struck at the heart of the enemy. And now, the factions would know what it felt like to be vulnerable. But as Cole looked at Mira, he knew the battle was far from over. They had won this round, but the war was still waiting.